Our second speaker is Heeyoung Jung. Heeyoung Jung is a Ph.D. student in process study at the CST. She received a Master of Sacred Theology from Union Theological Seminary in New York City, and a Master of Divinity from Yonsei University in New Jersey. She also received another Master of Theology in Systemic Theology from Yonsei University and a BA in Theology from Methodist Theological University in Seoul. That is really amazing. Or how many masters you already got? Okay, you are so amazing. So Jung's academic interest and research in process study are Asian and Korean ecofeminist studies from a post-colonial Whiteheadian worldview. She worked at the Ecological Civilization and the Center for Process Study as a Korea Project Assistance. The title of her paper is A New Paradigm of Worldview for Asian Women's Environmental Crisis from a post-colonial process perspective. Please welcome Heeyoung Jung.
Okay, so today I want to talk about a new paradigm of worldview for Asian women's environmental crisis from a post-colonial perspective. First, I want to introduce the person named Moon Dal-lim in Korea. Moon Dal-lim was studying theology at her young age and then became a farmer after getting married. So at first, she actually simply followed the modern practice of using chemicals, but after 2 years, she realized that she was seeing lots of frogs and other snakes dying in her field. So she decided to switch it to organic farming, which will be much more difficult to sustain over the next decade. But Moon Dal-lim's land came to more like a microorganism and barren soil. So Moon has been farming organic rice for 30 years, but has yet to raise the price of the rice. She did not raise the price because, actually she's my grandma, but I accidentally put the next one, sorry. But that's okay, thank you, Dave. Thank you, M.Div. So she did not actually raise the price because money is not her primary concern, even though she's a farmer who has only small farm in her countryside. The poorer the reason is, the more difficult it is to eat healthy food, but she believes that the poorer people are, the more nutritional food should be eaten. So she doesn't want to raise the price of the organic rice for 30 years. So Moon Dal-lim's practice are consistent with what I have called grandmother's model, guided by indigenous wisdom and that emphasize the caring for and living in harmony with nature. Through the Korean grandmother model that I suggested actually my master's thesis in Korea, it was 10 years ago, but Korean churches should understand the woman's living under the oppression of the patriarchal for a long time by reflecting the solemn effects her models. So we can look at the love of Jesus through the image of grandmother who gives her endless love and grace in the midst of the pain and adversity. So I was thinking the grandma, especially the Korean grandma, is a figure that casts religious experience into human terms. So I believe for everyone, a grandma is a person of the previous generation. So this applies not only the grandma of the 50-year-old man or but also grandma of the 20 years old woman and the grandmother of the 5 years old child. So in particularly in today's Korean society, a grandma is a woman with a special experience in history. So I want to, this is my grandma's picture. Actually, I took this picture when I was visiting her house in Korea with my child. So for example, she experienced Japanese colonialism in Korean society from her young age. And then she spent her teenage age trembling in fear in a situation where she could be taken as a comfort woman under the Japanese imperialism. And then after enjoying a short joy of the liberation, she had to experience the Korean War of the 1953. And then she took the refuge with her young children and husband, traveling from Seoul to Busan to protect her family. And after the Korean War, they returned to their devastated hometown and cultivated the land again and pioneered their life, and then faced actually the revolutionary industrial era and the democratization movement. So these aged women, like my grandma, have experienced a lot of things and a lot of histories, oppression through her own body. So this is why I want to explore our need for a new paradigm that will be stand against the industrial, capitalistic, colonial, and imperial tradition. Farmers such as Mundalim show us what it means to enact the metaphor of Korean grandmother, creating the post-colonial ecofeminist example of giving love, care, generosity, and resilience, and strength and preservation. So in Heeyoung Jung's book that I researched, she examined the work of the 10 indigenous farmers who represented the Korean mothers by following their ancestors' practical wisdom. So I think it is important to discover female farmers' knowledge and labor and wisdom of their life in a world centered on neo-capitalism. So in this sense, there are emerging examples of the indigenous farming in Asia, and so far, the theoretical discussion of the Asian women's preserving and using native plants has been based in many ways. And a policy proposal to revive native plants and support female farmers who can build native farming practice is needed in Korea, and to shift toward ecological and sustainable farming practice. So in order to make this change, policy activities, organizations that are actively interested in environmentalism and eco-diversity needed to take their actions. That's why, because our ecological civilization's goal is not just changing like a personal behavior or responsibility, rather we needed to shift our paradigm into a long-term vision by connecting to the policies. So that's why I want to explore why we needed to shift to a new paradigm that promotes the ecological civilization regardless of one's nationality, race, social class, gender, or other identities. This new paradigm will be based on understanding interdependent connections with others. So we needed to challenge the idea that human beings are not interrelated to other species. First of all, let us talk about the problem of Western capitalistic civilization. Our current ecological crisis has been created by humans, particularly men, white, and colonial rulers in history. Our current ecological crisis resulted from humans creating what they wanted and what men wanted and what colonial rulers wanted. So in this sense, women and colonialized people and nature as a whole were oppressed and exploited. So due to this fact, the modern civilizational understanding perpetuated the explanation of the oppression of the others. We needed to demand a new paradigm for living together with others, including all humans and nature. So why do we need to listen to Asian women's voice for the new paradigm? Or why do we need to pay attention to ecological issues? John Cobb said, civilization is inherently anti-ecological. And the other Indian ecofeminist, Vandana Shiva, said, development is another name for patriarchy. So that means in modern times, another patriarchy emerges in the name of the development. So development seeks to expand wealth creation within the economic vision of the modern Western patriarchy, which exploited women and nature. So it is based on excluding and invading other cultures. So Shiva also stressed the patriarchal nature of the Western science and technology, which understand nature in mechanistic terms. So as she stated, a contemporary development activity in the third world superimposed the scientific and economic paradigm created by Western, gender-based ideology on communities in other cultures. She helped us to understand the concept of ecological destruction and capitalistic growth as patriarchal capitalism. And also in our different social locations, how the Asian women argue their ecological concerns and experience today. They do so by focusing on intertwining ecological and social justice, arguing for the interconnection between capitalism and poverty and hunger, focusing on women in Asia rather than like universalizing human experience with regard to ecological concerns. From that book, Maria Meath argued that Chernobyl showed us more clearly than anything before that the modern techno-patriarchy destroys life, living system, and symbiosis. Afterwards, they can even measure the destruction perpetuated, but they cannot restore life. For that, they still need, as we all do, Gaia, Mother Earth, and woman. This is why only marginal transformation of the traditional paradigm cannot solve the ecological crisis we are facing today. We are witnessing time that demands a fundamental paradigm shift. So we urgently need to create an alternative paradigm that overcomes the limitation of the modern development and civilization. This problem is the historical background and formative process of the Western civilization restricted the worldview of the nature. By looking closely at Western colonialism and the way that it imposed its value on the world, we can see the need to change the paradigm to include non-Western regions and to encompass post-colonial ecofeminism. So we have needed to shift away from the established worldview for a long time, but we have yet to so. How can we foster the inspiration and hope necessary to achieve the deep transformation for ecological, social, and economic justice? Before returning to this question, I want to ask the related questions like what makes some people ignore others' value and others' nature and the earth? And what roles have colonialism and nationalism played in allowing people to justify exploitation all over the world? And have people considered hierarchical attitude of domination of man toward woman, human towards non-human, and the wealthy toward poor, and the white and light-skinned people toward people of the other skin color? And what values can exist in this world? Why is it held? So in modern Western thought, we can find a trace of some of the regions used to construct this harmful system of the belief all over the world. The Western Christian perspective largely considered God to be like Aristotle's unmoved world, unmoved mover, and yet if we believe God is the unmoved mover, we are left with the problem of God's involvement with the world crisis. In traditional theism, pantheistic monism metaphysically allowed people to consider God and the universe as the separate and left all control up to the Almighty. So in this tradition, the Rene Descartes wrote, examine an ontological dualistic understanding of the both mind and matters as finite substance and God as the infinite substance. His interpretation focused on two finite substances without necessary internal relation to each other, only regulated by God. So according to the Philip Creighton and Andrew Schwartz's book, What is Ecological Civilization? It says, Rene Descartes defended a turn to the subject as the sole source of the meaning and value. Descartes viewed animals as mere machines and nature as a background for the adventure of the mind and thought. He dichotomized the world into thinking things and extended things. Thomas Hume affirmed that the human condition is a war of all against the all. So the life on earth is nasty, rusty, and short. So his understanding of ontological dualism allowed people to have limited options concerning casual relationships with human knowledge. Given his radical separation between mind and matter, Descartes' influence limited the relationship between God and the world in a hierarchical views. And in process theology, the book of the process theology, John Cobb and David Griffiths describe how traditional understanding of God idolized the notion of the independence as Leibniz and Descartes' view. So it says, since God was said to be totally independent with no real relation to any other actualities, it was natural to think in similar terms of the worldly actualities that God created, especially since some of them were said to be made in the divine image. Descartes first said there were three kinds of substances: God, finite mind, and finite bodies. But then he pointed out the finite minds and bodies were not substances in the strict sense of the term, since they did not require God as their creator. So Whitehead turned traditional Western thought and René Descartes' enlightenment idea upside down by arguing Cartesian dualism between humanity and the universe was evidence of the independence, but of the interdependence. Whiteheadian's perspective argued that all living things are event-based and by being interrelated with each other. All living things engage in a process of becoming, and his book, Whitehead, argues for a new perspective and worldview, claiming that all things are floral, that is, actual entities are dynamically interrelated with others and they interact through the event-based actual occasions. So like Whitehead, Vandana Shiva also criticized the Neutronian Cartesian's idea of the separation as represented in traditional Western thought, arguing that it allows people to justify their dominant and hierarchical views to maintain control, that it became the dominant worldview during the Industrial Revolution. Furthermore, she also introduced a new science such as like a quantum theory that can be used to highlight the inseparable of all things. So she claims ecology teaches us everything is a web of the life, that Gaia is a self-organizing system at every level, from the cell to organism to the planet. So I open with the example of what can happen when we shift the paradigm toward ecological civilization. So like for farmer Mundalim, food or farming should not be a commercial item that can serve everywhere in the world, even though some people might say food is commercial good or commodities. But every being on the ground interacts with and influence the environment in different ways. Historically, every culture and region produces its own unique food. Since everyone must eat, and return to local food sovereignty might be the key to food security for the earth. So globalization has left Earth with an agricultural crisis and food crisis. Industrial globalization as a food system has ruined the earth and humanity at the same time. That So we must ultimately shift to an ecological worldview of the interdependence for the Earth. By holding this ecological worldview of the interdependence, we can actually protect local farms and local food in order to reduce our environmental footprint and rebalance economic inequality that result from the globalization of the farming system. So we need to paradigm of the farming grounded in a focus on the local community, regional farmers, and ethical practice and distribution system. A regionalized system of the harmonized practice like this will bring us ethical and sustainable food and helping to protect the environment for all creatures as a part of the interconnected web of life in our planet. So interestingly, as I mentioned earlier, Moon and her husband have traveled all over the Asia rural area for 30 years every winter, meeting Asian farmers and spreading the organic farming method and learning about their local farming method. Her farming implies that farming practice is not just a practice itself, it's giving nutrients for us, and it is being itself and sacred. Thus, a farming practice deserves dignity and respect. We have a dignity and respect for their farming practice against our greed and inequalities and over-consuming. We can take steps toward a new paradigm in hope, ensuring that all things can live together in harmony with Earth and with our life. So while global corporations such as Monsanto and Cargill privileged the native seeds given by nature to sell for their greed, Korean female farmer like Moon, as represented like a Korean grandmother, she have tried to keep their native seeds and farm for their family and for their local communities. According to the Shin Kim's book, a Korean grandmother farmer said, the universe is on a steamed rice spoon. Spoonful rice is engraved with the life of the female farmers who endured and overcome diverse seasons and times in history. Their tears and their strengths remained at their dining table as they have overcome all sorts of the discrimination, colonialism, and patriarchal neoliberal capitalism. So we can see the new paradigm and wisdom from these Korean grandmothers farming instead of the old mechanical colonial paradigm and development. That's it. Thank you.